Are you ready to talk about these papers and how to grade them? Okay, let's start off with one of your classmates' papers. People's claims about Gen Z being the dumbest generation. Let's be a little careful here. First of all, what's wrong right here? Okay, second of all, what's wrong right here? Yeah, if you remember back to sentence diagramming, we know that claims as the subject is the verb. So you said claims is. Because those grammar mistakes are right up front, it has a slightly more impact because the first impression of this is like, whoo, yikes. So be careful with those first impressions. But based on the opinions is based on the biased opinions of other generations. So that is my topic sentence. So I'm now going to look for this paragraph to support the idea that it's a biased opinion. So most people see the young as dumb, lack of knowledge, or naive about what's going on in the world. But these are all based off their opinions. There are no statistics showing or proving that these statements are true. What is the biggest problem in this chunk of text? Yeah, you're saying things that are not necessarily true. It's saying there are no statistics. You have no idea if that's true or not because you haven't seen all the statistics there are to see. You also do have a problem with this, most people see. Well, how do you know most people see that? Because that's making a claim. If you said many, well, whatever the true percentage is, you could argue and say, well, that is many. But by saying most, you're saying that it is at least 51% of people believe that young people are dumb. But that's not necessarily true. Most of the people I know that are older don't see young kids as dumb. So the biggest problem here is that you are saying some things that aren't actually true. The other problem is I'm assuming that this is trying to function as a claim, but it doesn't feel very much like a claim. So let's keep going and see what happens. Generation after generation have sworn up and down that they are smarter and better than the generation that comes after them. Well, that also feels like a claim. And now I kind of have a problem because I have two things that feel like claims. So let's keep going and see sort of what our evidence focuses on. Mark Bommerlin claims that each year the traits of worldliness and autonomy seem to trickle down into every generation. So when you look at this evidence, and you do have good evidence here, my question is, does it best support claim number 1 or claim number 2? Yeah, it best supports this claim number 2 here, which means that first claim is kind of hanging out. It doesn't have a job. So quite frankly, that first claim, the paper would actually be better if we just got rid of the first claim. And then we would go from a topic sentence to a claim to the, claim. Down here, we got rid of this claim. To the evidence that supports that claim. So now I've got a clearer structure and I've managed to delete two things that are not true. I think this is a case of a student writing before they were really ready to write. And so the hand kind of just started putting words down before the brain fully caught up and started constructing arguments. Because this section right here is actually quite good. So, you ready to keep going? But in a way, he contradicts his own statement because he is pointing his finger at the newest generation, Gen Z, and calling them the dumbest generation. That is actually a new claim because it's saying that he is contradicting his own statement. That's a new claim, which means I don't have commentary for this evidence. But that's okay because it could be that the commentary will all come at the end and you are allowed to move parts of those arguments around as long as they are all still there. So let's keep going. Annie E. Casey Foundation. Yeah, here's the problem. You are saying Annie E. as if it's a person. The Annie E. Casey Foundation, I don't know how to spell it. Yeah, let's assume that's it. The Annie A. Casey Foundation, that is all one title. It's like saying the Ford Corporation. So, or the Ford Company. If I talk about the Ford Company, you can't just take part of it out. It is the Ford Company. If I'm referring to it formally, I call it the Ford Company. Here I have to call it the Annie A. Casey Foundation. If I shorten this up to just Ford, well, then I'm like, is that a name? Is that a person? Are we talking about Richard Ford? What are we got going here? So you can't just break that up. So that's a little thing that needs to be fixed. But your trick is you want to look at the opening where it lists the evidence and look at how the AP board has referred to them. And they do not refer to them as Annie E. They refer to them as the Annie A. Casey Foundation in that list of sources. Okay, and the Annie A. Casey Foundation says in her article that says in their article, it's not a person, that Gen Z is racially and ethnically diverse, progressive, and pro-government. She also includes that the data comes from the Pew Research Center. Well, in the article, okay, this is evidence. Now, question, does this evidence support the idea that he is contradicting himself? I can see how they're trying to use this because Bomberlin is saying that the autonomy and the worldliness is going away, and Annie A. Casey is contradicting that. It doesn't really prove that Bomberline is contradicting himself, but it does sort of contradict Bomberline. So it's a weak connection, but I do see the connection. The dumbest generation, there are more biased opinions and claims than hard factual evidence. That's where the commentary is starting. And I would like to see more commentary here. It would be so easy in this commentary to say something like, Bomberline lacks any statistics on this subject or that subject. Here's the problem with this claim. He's backing it up with his own opinion. And so there is some commentary here. I think the commentary is a little bit weak, but overall, what grade would you give this? Okay, if I am grading this, if I were just have an A would be that not only do I see the argument structure is correct throughout, but I would see that the evidence is best chosen, that the arguments are really tight, there's no extra information, and it's really like special, either in terms of how it's written or it's special in terms of creating some really interesting commentary that I hadn't thought of. So, is A on the table? Probably not. If I'm looking at a B, for a B, I am looking at 100% all the pieces of an argument are in place and it is all correct. It's not as shiny, it might not be as thought-provoking, but it's all correct. Is this a B? Probably not, because some of these pieces in here are weak. If I'm looking at a C, what I'm looking at is I have claim, I have evidence, I have commentary. They may not be the best, but I've got all the pieces in place. I would say the evidence is in place. Claims a little bit of weakness because you have an extra claim that doesn't fit anywhere, and the commentary is really weak here. So this is probably going to land maybe C minus D plus. So I tried to be a little nice on the grading so that if there were a question, I tried giving you, benefit of the doubt, not coming down on you quite as hard because we're at the end of the semester. But hopefully you can see that there are some places here where this could really be improved. And this is very typical of what I saw in a lot of the papers. So hopefully go back and look at your paper and hopefully you can see whether you make some of these same mistakes. The having extra information in it including in a section that you shouldn't include, like this up here, that was very, very common in the papers that I saw. Lots of you were including things that really did not have a place in the paper. So you got to make sure that you don't include things that don't actually fit. So here's the next one. No, younger generations aren't dumb. Please do not start with a yes or a no. Just tell me what it is you're saying. Younger generations aren't dumb. That, to me, it's functioning as a topic sentence. It worries me a little bit because I don't actually have much of a topic here. But let's keep going and let's see what we got. When it comes to how information is passed down, there is a dependence on circumstance and time period. Okay, that I really like. Why is that such an interesting claim? Because it's telling me that information depends on circumstance and time period. And that's not something that's immediately obvious. Therefore, that automatically makes it a little bit more interesting. Now, the question is, if that's the claim, is that going to get backed up with evidence? Things change throughout time, especially what is considered important. Okay, that's pretty much the claim again. It's just saying it in different words, and that's fine. I'm not as upset about the doubling up this time because it's a little clearer. Because dependent on circumstance is perhaps a little ambiguous. So things change throughout time is simply more, well, it's clarifying the claim that's already there. Please watch your spelling. But now we do have evidence. As Begley states, ooh, nice, I've got my citation right up front. In her article, The Dumbest Generation Don't Be Dumb, who's to say they are dumb because fewer of them care who wrote Horatio? Begley, again, citation. I don't like how long this is. This doesn't feel embedded. It feels like a whole sentence. But here's what I do like. The claim is that information depends on circumstance and time period. The evidence, Horatio, that's definitely something that in a previous time definitely needed to be learned. They're talking about, that modern kids don't care who wrote. So you have this whole, it definitely is about circumstance and time period. So that really works. So the evidence so far is a nice link to that claim. Now, if we're doing good, hopefully we'll have some commentary. The commentary does not have to come immediately after the evidence, though. So you could have this claim, this evidence. We could go into a new claim and new evidence. It would be strange, but possibly the person would have a reason to do that. But you do need to have commentary somewhere. But let's take a look at the next section. This clearly shows the contrast about how the generations view things, skills, as important. Just as time periods change, so does need to know information, just like how 1966 politics determined whether you were going to get drafted. People now don't need to worry about that. What do you have in this section? Yeah, I've got some nice commentary here. They're telling us, look at the contrast between the generations, that time periods change. Therefore, the need to know information changes. So we have some cause and effect there. It then pops into this. People don't need to worry about if you're going to get drafted. Therefore, they don't keep track of politics as well, which means we've gone from commentary right back into evidence. And this is what I keep telling you guys about. You don't have to keep the structure. Claim, evidence, commentary. Claim, evidence, commentary. That's not necessary. What works nicely here is I've got claim. I can't really see that. Let me change my pen. We've got claim, We've got evidence. We've got commentary. We have more evidence, and this is all part of one argument, and you are allowed to split that evidence up into different sections. Now, let's keep reading. Circumstances change as time goes on, and so does the importance of information. Even if some facts aren't relevant to the time period, that doesn't mean not knowing them makes you, please don't use you, the younger generations, dumb. Okay. What is this section that I just read? Yeah, we're going back to commentary. So this is commentary for that same argument. Again, it goes on to circumstances change. Even if facts aren't relevant to the time period, it doesn't mean not knowing them makes a person dumb. So we have a little contrast there. So now we are going back and forth between commentary and evidence, but it actually reads really smoothly. So even though you first had the evidence split, so you can see you've got some evidence here and then evidence here, and you then have the commentary split with commentary here and commentary here, it all works. So you don't have to get so attached to a particular pattern, claim, evidence, commentary, claim, evidence, commentary. It's important that you simply have good arguments where each of those parts of an argument is present. Okay, the next argument, I cut it off a little bit because I didn't take a picture of the backside, but let's take a look at it. I have highlighted in red the evidence. So you've got two different quotes, each of which is from Simpson. By the way, really nice citation here. However, just like before, there is a problem with the fact that instead of having quote fragments, you've got great big chunks of quote. So the quotes are very long, where fragments would work better, okay? However, here's my question. I have got some stuff underlined in red. Although people like to point out things, is up front. Intelligence cannot be measured by one scale. When picking at people's minds to see how much they know, please don't use you, and end up with statements such as, information may be relevant and useful during one time, but its relevance, and then this continues on to the backside, which I didn't photocopy. So yeah, well, we'll just work with what we have. My question is, of all of these underlined sentences, because remember, what's highlighted is evidence. Here's your evidence. Of all of the underlined, which is your claim? Yeah, your claim is actually right here. Intelligence cannot be measured by one scale. Okay. What is the evidence for it can't be measured by one scale? Simple, because at one point the scale was seaports and exports. It was principal products. And so that scale used to be what was used. Nowadays, that scale would be just ridiculous because that information that was relevant at one time is no longer relevant. And in the commentary, they do talk about, they do make some comparison about how this is completely irrelevant now. So, but what I really like in this section is that in this section, you can really see that this is a student that knows what has to be in the argument, but is not holding on so tightly to format that the argument doesn't work. Now, taking a look at this, keeping in mind that you have one argument down here and one argument up here. So you've got an argument primarily in blue and an argument primarily in red. Tell me something that doesn't work as well. I am hoping you're recognizing that that transition from one argument to another is really weak. In fact, it's possible that this was meant to be part of this argument, but I can't exactly tell because time period could be a reference up here to like the 1966 politics, but it could also be a reference down here to that whole 1950s knowing the principal products of your country is the most important thing. In other words, you've got sort of a muddy middle here where it's hard to tell where one argument turns into the other argument. Other than that, I really do kind of like this. Please don't ever do this again. So this starting with a word like no or yes, don't do that. And you've got a little bit of weakness. You know, the topic sentence feels a little vague because this is supposed to be one of two body paragraphs. But overall, what grade do you think this should earn? If it is an A, all the pieces are there and all of the pieces are done really, really well. And I have something special there. There's at least one commentary, or there's one place for the vocabulary, or there's some really good grammar. There's something that just goes, that's a little bit special. Is this an A? Possibly. I do like the fact that it's not holding on to the formula. I can see all the parts of an argument, but they are not sort of slavishly held on to. I think it would probably be more honest to call this a B because the transitions are weak and that topic sentence is not as strong as it should be, but all the other things are so well done. Yeah, maybe we'll call it a B plus, but I would call this probably a B paper. So, are you feeling better about knowing what you need to get into a paper? Yes? No? Okay, let's try this again. Okay, this paper is starting off a lot differently. Where is my pen? Come on, pen, be a pen. According to Mark Bommerline, younger generations are the dumbest there've ever been. So that is setting up for a concession. So I am going to assume that if they did the full essay, the paragraph above would have been an argument and that you hopefully would add some sort of transition in here, some sort of bridge to connect the previous paragraph with this one. But certainly this is taking a position. This functions as a topic sentence, so this is fine. Younger generations are the dumbest they've ever been, but he couldn't be more wrong. Now, this is very much the concession rebuttal. Here is what I am hoping. For you to show that you are respecting different points of view, because that's the whole goal of doing a rebuttal. Show the opposition that you understand them, that you respect them, so that they will listen to you when you give them a different point of view. Is this sentence right here enough to show that you understand, completely understand Mark Bommerline's argument and where he's coming from? Is this sufficient by itself? No, it's not, which means for this to really be a good rebuttal paragraph, we need to have more about how Mark Bommerline, I don't even know how you say it. We need to see more about how Bommerline sees the world before we can really do an effective rebuttal. If you tell people they're wrong right up front, it's never going to go over well. You have to really establish, dude, I hear you, I get you, this is your position, isn't it? Okay, now let's deconstruct and talk about why that position is wrong. So I am now going to be looking for two things in this paragraph as a whole. One, does it show a thorough and deep understanding of Bommerline? Two, does it really deconstruct Bommerline's argument? So let's start taking a look at what we have. Bomberline points out that as the advantages of the young American increase and time goes on, the knowledge and skills haven't kept pace. Is that showing respect for Bomberline's position, or is that explaining why he's wrong? Yeah, that is showing respect for Bomberline. So we're going back to sort of what I'm coloring green, which is the opposition's position. You have some beautiful quote fragments here that are wonderfully embedded, and I really like those. Something that is not as well done is going to be the citation. The AP board is fine if you use the last names. And in fact, what they will do is they will give you in that list of sources what last name or what citation you should use. So the AP board would be fine if you use Bomberlin. The AP board is equally fine if you use source A, source C, source D. That's fine. But here's the trick. You've got to pick one. And whichever one you pick, you've got to stick with that throughout. So if you decide to use names, you are never allowed to use source A, source B, source C. You can't ever use those. If instead you choose to use source A, source C, source D, you are not ever allowed to use names. You've got to pick one or the other. But citations are not a mix and match proposition. So if you're going to use Bomberlin, use Bomberlin. Let's get rid of that source A. Okay, let's take a look at the next section. While he certainly provides evidence to his claims through citing surveys, he doesn't do anything to actually prove a connection between his claim that enlightenment of the youth hasn't happened because of quick access to communication and information to the apparent loss of intelligence. So, is that showing that you understand his position? Or is that doing the rebuttal piece? The here's why he's wrong. It's actually a little bit of both. You're saying he provides evidence through citing surveys, but then it immediately comes back with he doesn't do anything. Oops. Let me erase that. I meant to grab a highlighter and I grabbed a pencil instead. Sorry. Highlighter. He doesn't do anything to actually prove a connection between his evidence and the apparent loss of intelligence. Now, I would like this to be more specific. So, saying something like, he lacks a specific survey to support this claim. That would be a little bit nicer because anything little generic, but we're now getting into the rebuttal part. Here's why the opposition is wrong. So let's keep going. Perhaps this is because there isn't one and Bomberline just seeks a reason to insult the new generations. What do you think that is? Okay, that is sort of a rebuttal, but here is the problem with this. This is not supported by evidence. In other words, this is a guess. Guesses are not great when you are trying to make an argument. You could certainly go off of this and say, if Bomberline had strong evidence, he would have cited the specific survey. He would have explained how many people were involved in the survey and would have given proof that the survey actually reflected what he said. He doesn't do that. Therefore, his opinion comes off more as an insult to the new generation than actual evidence. That would have been perfect. But this certainly comes off as sort of a guess. And this, don't reference yourself. Is this paper supposed to be about the reading articles, or is this paper supposed to be about you? It's supposed to be about the reading articles. Don't include references to yourself. Okay, let's take a look at the next bit that we've got going, this right here. In fact, one could say the new generations are getting smarter. Begley could agree. Not could. Begley would agree. Or, even better, Begley's argument posits exactly this. So, this is in fact a new claim, but if you notice, this new claim is still arguing about that whole bomber line is wrong. And so now you have a reference up here to bomber line, but you also have a reference down here to a news source. So this is a wonderful way of getting two different sources into a rebuttal paragraph. So that's really well done. Let's take a look at this. In fact, one could say the new generations are getting smarter. Begley would agree. The new way information is perceived and processed means that young people don't care less about information. They care more, semicolon, they just care more about where to find it. Question, is that evidence, claim, or commentary? I actually don't know whether the student means this to be commentary or if they mean it to be evidence. It feels like it should be evidence, but if it is, it should be cited. So that feels a little awkward. Even still, according to Begley, the IQ scores of the younger generation are much higher than those of the older ones. Perfect. That is evidence. It is cited. I've got Begley right there. It is summarized, and that is absolutely perfect. I will concede. No. I will concede and say this to, and say, I will concede and not say this to be true or not, considering I have no way to prove the connection. A, don't say that you can or can't prove something. Just tell me what you're proving. B, you actually have enough evidence in the packet to go ahead and support your position. So that should not be there. In conclusion, Bomberline just seems to be dismissive of the younger ones, and then time ran out. So mid-word, it vanished. So, what do I like about this? Well, take a look in this beginning. What is really well done in this beginning? Hopefully you said something like, they use good evidence. They embedded the evidence really, really well. I have some nice commentary here that is coming back and saying why this isn't true. It's not quite as specific as I would like it. I would like this to be more specific and to actually call out the specific flaws with the evidence. But you certainly do have the claim evidence commentary, and so that certainly works. Down here in this bottom half, I'm not quite as happy with what's going on. What's wrong down here in this bottom half? Okay, in this bottom half, you do have evidence. I'm thinking, well, you do have a claim. This claim is up here. The commentary, this might be commentary, but I don't see a good type of reasoning. This can't be commentary because this is far too personal. And this is starting to feel more like an emotional reaction than a logical one, which is going to get you in big, big trouble. So this second argument, it almost feels like because time was running out, you got to this point here and there was just a panic flail. You've got to make sure that you are really focusing on having all the parts of the argument be clean. But this is a nice setup for a rebuttal, and with a little bit of cleaning up, you could do some good stuff. So what grade would you give this? This is probably going to be a C+. You have enough flaws in this second half that it's hard to say that everything is done correctly. That's what a B is. Everything is done correctly. But at the same time, you do have some stuff that's done well in here. So what do you think? What I want you to do right now is I want you to go back. I want you to take a look at your own paper, and I want you to compare your paper to the ones you've seen here. Where can you improve it? Where are you doing really nice work?